There's a peculiar geometry to the human heart. We are taught that distance is a linear measurement, miles, kilometers, the space between two chairs. But in the architecture of the soul, distance is a vibration. You have felt it. The moment you finally exhale, the moment you decide to turn your gaze back to your own shoreline, the horizon shifts. The one who fled, the avoidant soul, suddenly reappears, as if summoned by the very silence you finally dared to create. It feels like a game of cosmic cat and mouse, a cruel irony of the universe. But gravity does not play games. The tide does not return to the shore to tease the sand. It returns because it is bound by a law it cannot break. You are not witnessing a change of heart. You are witnessing the inevitable physics of a shared nervous system. You are experiencing the Anxious-Avoidant Trap, disguised as a spiritual pilgrimage. Tonight we move beyond the hopeium of waiting. We will dismantle the mechanics of why they return, not through the lens of longing, but through the cold, beautiful clarity of psychology and the ancient laws of resonance. To understand why the avoidant soul returns, we must first descend into the quiet, shadowed corridors of their internal world. We often mistake their departure for a lack of love. We perceive their silence as a cold, calculated choice. But in the architecture of the soul, flight is rarely about the person being left behind. It is an instinctive movement toward air. For the avoidant soul, intimacy is not felt as a warm embrace. It is felt as a slow, creeping loss of oxygen. They do not run because they do not feel the connection. They run because they feel it too much. They feel it with a staggering intensity that their nervous system is not yet built to contain. Imagine a house with old wiring being hit by a massive surge of electricity. The fuses must blow to save the structure. Their flight is that blown fuse. It is a biological imperative to survive. In the early stages of your connection, the avoidant soul was likely captivated by your light. They were drawn to the depth and the safety you offered. But as the threads of your lives began to tangle, a hidden alarm began to chime within them. This is the core paradox of the unawakened counterpart. They crave the very union that terrifies them. To them, being truly seen is synonymous with being hunted. To be known is to be controlled. When you offer your heart, they do not see a gift. They see a responsibility they are not sure they can fulfill. They see a mirror that reflects all the parts of themselves they have spent a lifetime hiding. The closer you get, the louder the internal voice screams for space. This is not a rejection of your worth. It is a frantic attempt to reclaim their own boundaries. They are trying to find where they end and where you begin. The anxious heart, in its beautiful but misplaced devotion, often accelerates this flight. You feel the avoidant soul pulling away. You feel the temperature of the connection drop. Your natural instinct is to lean in. You want to heal the rift. You want to provide the reassurance you think they need. But in the physics of this specific bond, leaning in creates a profound energetic pressure. You are unknowingly crowding the very exit they are trying to reach. Your longing becomes a weight. Your spiritual prayers and your constant thoughts act as a tether. Even if you are not speaking to them, they feel the pull of your focus. It feels like a hand on their shoulder when they are trying to run a race. This pressure confirms their greatest fear. It confirms that intimacy equals a loss of freedom. They must move further away just to feel the silence again. They must reach a distance where they can no longer feel the heat of your expectation. This is where the psychological trap becomes a spiritual lesson. The avoidant soul moves into a state of deactivation. They tell themselves stories to justify their exit. They focus on your flaws. They convince themselves the timing is wrong. They might even seek out distractions or shallow connections to numb the ache of your absence. But these are merely walls built to keep the flood at bay. Beneath the surface, the quantum entanglement remains. You are two notes in a single chord. One cannot be struck without the other vibrating. The reason they are drawn back to you is found in the moment you finally stop leaning. When the anxious heart finally collapses back into its own center, something remarkable happens. The energetic pressure vanishes. The wall they were pushing against is suddenly gone. They stumble forward into the vacuum you left behind. In that sudden silence, the avoidant soul is forced to face themselves. Without your pursuit to distract them, they can no longer blame you for their discomfort. The coldness of the world begins to seep in. They realize that the freedom they sought is actually a vast, echoing loneliness. They begin to remember the warmth of your light, but now that warmth is no longer a threat. It is a memory of home. They return because the vacuum of your absence is more painful than the pressure of your presence. They return because they have finally caught their breath and realized they are starving. This is the gravity of the soul. It is a slow, inevitable pull that functions outside of time. They return not because they have suddenly healed all their wounds, but because the tether of the connection is stronger than the fear of the fire. You must understand that their return is a response to your stillness. It is not a reward for your waiting. It is a result of your withdrawal. When you take your energy off the bridge, they are left standing on the other side, looking at a gap they did not expect. They are drawn back to the strength of your sovereignty. They are attracted to the version of you that no longer needs them to stay. This is the analytical truth behind the spiritual myth. The more you inhabit your own life, the more magnetic you become to the one who fled. They are not looking for a savior. They are looking for a North Star. They are looking for someone who is so grounded in their own essence that they can no longer be swayed by the coming and going of the tide. The flight was necessary for them to realize that no matter how far they run, they are always orbiting the same sun. They return because they have finally understood that the only way to find themselves is to stop running from the mirror you hold. We must now turn the lens inward to face the most profound and perhaps most uncomfortable truth of this entire journey. You have spent months or perhaps years meticulously documenting the behavior of the avoidant soul. You have become an expert in their silence. You have decoded their childhood wounds and analyzed the specific timing of their retreats. You have built a complex map of their psyche to explain why they cannot stay. But in this exhaustive search for answers, a subtle and dangerous displacement has occurred. You have become so focused on the landscape of the other that you have completely vacated your own. This is the hidden architecture of the connection. The avoidant soul is not just a person you love. They are a mirror held up to your own capacity for self-abandonment. Every time you project your energy across the bridge to wonder what they are feeling, you are leaving your own house empty. Every time you wait for a sign from the universe to validate your worth, you are telling your own soul that its value is conditional. This is a sophisticated form of avoidance disguised as spiritual devotion. It is easier to analyze the trauma of another than it is to sit in the cold, quiet center of your own loneliness. The exhaustion you feel is not just from the loss of the other. It is the exhaustion of carrying a weight that was never yours to bear. You have tried to heal two people while standing in the shoes of only one. You have attempted to manage the nervous system of the avoidant soul from a distance, hoping that if you just send enough love or hold enough space, they will finally feel safe enough to return. But this energetic pressure is exactly what keeps them away. In the realm of resonance, your longing acts as a repelling force. It is a frequency of lack. It sends a message into the field that you are incomplete without their presence. The avoidant soul, being highly sensitive to the loss of their own autonomy, feels this pull as a demand. They sense the vacancy in you and they realize that if they return, they will be expected to fill it. This creates a cycle where your pursuit of union actually ensures your continued separation. You are waiting for them to change so that you can finally feel at peace. This is the ultimate trap of the anxious heart. It places the key to your sovereignty in the pocket of someone who is currently running away. Consider the metaphor of the lighthouse. A lighthouse is one of the most powerful structures on the coast, yet it is entirely stationary. It does not run down the beach chasing after ships in a storm. It does not scream into the wind or beg the sailors to notice its glow. It simply stands. Its entire purpose is to maintain its own luminosity. It exists to be a fixed point in a world of shifting tides. If the lighthouse were to leave its post to pursue a ship, it would cease to be a lighthouse. It would become just another piece of debris tossed by the waves. This is the paradigm shift you are being invited to make. You must stop being the seeker and start being the destination. The moment you decide to withdraw your gaze from the horizon and return it to your own light, the entire geometry of the connection changes. You are no longer waiting for a return. You are becoming a presence that is worth returning to. This is not a game of strategy. It is an act of profound self-reclamation. You are calling your power back from the person, the past, and the potential future. You are deciding that your life is happening now, regardless of who is standing beside you. When you inhabit your own life fully, the avoidant soul experiences a sudden and jarring shift in the environment. The pressure they have been pushing against for so long simply vanishes. They look back and see that the house they were so afraid of being trapped in is finally lit from within. They see a version of you that is no longer leaning. They see a version of you that is whole, grounded, and terrifyingly beautiful in your independence. This creates a new kind of gravity. It is the gravity of sovereignty. For the first time, they are forced to deal with the silence of their own life without the buffer of your longing. They realize that they are no longer being chased, which means they are no longer being defined by your pursuit. They are left alone with the reality of what they have walked away from. This is the only environment in which true choice can exist. As long as you are chasing, they are only reacting. When you stop, they are finally forced to act. This shift requires you to kill the story you have told yourself about this connection. You must stop labeling them as the one who is unawakened and yourself as the one who knows the truth. This binary keeps you stuck in a loop of superiority and suffering. Instead, see the connection as a single organism trying to find balance. If one side is overfunctioning, the other side must underfunction. If one side is obsessing, the other side must avoid. To break the cycle, you must return to your own center with a fierce and uncompromising devotion. You must become so interested in your own expansion that the movements of the avoidant soul become secondary to the movement of your own soul. This is the path to peace. It is the realization that the union you have been seeking out there can only be mirrored once it has been established in here. You are not waiting for them to wake up. You are waking up to the fact that you were never actually waiting for them. You were waiting for yourself to come home. Once you are home, the door is open, but you are no longer standing in the window searching the dark for a pair of headlights. You are simply living in the light you have created. To move from the exhaustion of the weight into the power of presence, we must move beyond intellectual understanding. We must translate the philosophy of the soul into the language of the body. This transition requires 3 specific internal shifts that will alter the very frequency of your connection. The first shift is the withdrawal of the gaze. For too long, your internal eyes have been fixed on the horizon. You have been scanning for signs and searching for meaning in the mundane. You see a specific number on a clock and call it a message. You hear a song and call it a confirmation. But this constant outward focus is an energetic leak. It is as if you are leaving every window and door of your house open while the heat escapes into the winter night. The withdrawal of the gaze is not an act of punishment toward the avoidant soul. It is an act of conservation for your own spirit. Every time your mind wanders to what they are doing or who they are with, you are sending your life force away from your center. You must learn to catch these thoughts like stray threads and gently pull them back. Practice the art of returning to the physical sensation of the present moment. When the urge to check a profile or analyze a past conversation arises, place your hand on your heart and feel the rise and fall of your own breath. You're calling your power back from the distance. You are deciding that your attention is a sacred resource that belongs primarily to you. By withdrawing your gaze, you stop feeding the pressure that keeps the other in flight. You begin to inhabit your own skin with a density that is naturally magnetic. The second shift is the reclamation of nervous system sovereignty. We must be honest about the biology of this connection. The dance between the anxious heart and the avoidant soul is often fueled by a physical addiction to intermittent reinforcement. The highs of the reunion are so intoxicating because they are preceded by the agonizing lows of silence. This creates a dopamine loop in your brain that mimics the patterns of deep devotion, but is actually a state of high-stress dysregulation. You have mistaken the feeling of a racing heart for the feeling of destiny. To break this cycle, you must treat your connection as a biological event rather than just a spiritual one. Sovereignty means that your internal peace is no longer a hostage to the actions of another. You must begin the work of regulating your own nervous system through grounded practices. Use the coldness of water, the depth of the breath, and the stillness of meditation to tell your body that it is safe right now. You are teaching your cells that they do not need the presence of the other to survive. When you achieve this state of biological independence, you lose the frantic energy of the seeker. You become a calm harbor. The avoidant soul is instinctively drawn to this stability because they no longer feel they are being asked to regulate your emotions for you. They see a person who is anchored in their own being, and that anchor creates a safety they have never known. The third shift is the intentional death of the story. We live in a world of narratives, and the spiritual community is full of labels that can become cages. When you call someone a runner, you automatically cast yourself as the chaser. When you label a connection as a twin flame struggle, you give yourself permission to endure pain that you would never accept in any other context. These stories feel comforting because they give a name to your suffering, but they also keep you tethered to the past. You must be willing to let the story die. This means dropping the labels and the expectations of how the journey should unfold. It means admitting that you do not know the ending. When you kill the story, you stop living in a projected future and start living in the actual present. You move from waiting for them to living with yourself. This shift is the most terrifying because it requires you to face the void without the protection of a romantic myth. But in that void, you find your true self. You realize that the connection does not need a name to exist. It does not need a timeline to be valid. By letting go of the narrative, you allow the connection to breathe and evolve naturally. You stop trying to force the ocean into a cup. You simply stand on the shore and watch the tide come in and go out, knowing that your value is not determined by the water's edge. These three shifts, the withdrawal of the gaze, the sovereignty of the nervous system, and the death of the story, are the tools of the master. They are the moves of a soul that has graduated from the school of longing. When you integrate these shifts, you are no longer a victim of the anxious-avoidant trap. You are a sovereign being who understands the physics of resonance. You understand that the avoidant soul returns not when they are chased, but when they are finally allowed to be forgotten. They return when the space you have created is so vast and so peaceful that they can finally hear the sound of their own heart calling them back to yours. But the greatest irony of all is that by the time they arrive, you may find that the work of returning to yourself was the only destination that ever mattered. You are no longer scanning the horizon for a ship because you have become the land itself. You are firm, you are fertile, and you are whole. The return of the other is no longer a rescue mission. It is simply a homecoming to a place that was always waiting for both of you. The avoidant soul returns because they are part of you. In the quantum realm, there is no away. There is only hidden. But do not mistake their return for your destination. The goal of this journey was never to get the person. The goal was to become the version of you that no longer requires another person to feel whole. The paradox is that once you reach that state of sovereign wholeness, you become so energetically heavy, so grounded in your own truth, that the avoidant soul has no choice but to be pulled into your orbit. But by then, you may find that the view from your own lighthouse is so beautiful, You are no longer scanning the horizon for a ship to save you. You are simply enjoying the light,